I'm not going to make a $5 thing. My mission in life is to make cool shit, right? So I'm not going to make a $5 anything. I'm going to make the best thing possible.
If you're looking to leave the 9-to-5 and elevate your side hustle, the Hustle the Day podcast is the podcast for you. Your host, Trent Bray, left the 9-to-5 grind behind and is helping others do the same and focus on the future. Hear from others who have done it and how they did it. Jump in as we talk entrepreneurship, mindset, and strategy. Just take it one day at a time and hustle the day.
On this episode of the Hustle the Day podcast, I am joined by Callye Keen. Callye has a background in product development and manufacturing, and he has some crazy stories behind it. We talk about BS excuses, we talk about $700 fidget spinners, and so many other things. You're going to have to listen to this one. Let's jump into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast. Super honored to have Callye Keen here today. Callye, why don't you jump in here, tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, Trent. So, yeah, I really appreciate being able to hop on the podcast here and share with your audience. So I am your manufacturing and product guy. That's the little short of it. I grew up in a precision manufacturing facility here outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. I've developed products for high growth startups, for major corporations, for government entities. And I've done that for about 12, 13 years. I really like the challenge of working for the defense market, the aerospace market. You end up designing some amazing things. But when you work with a big corporation, it's kind of like, you don't get that attaboy, you don't get that personal fulfillment, you don't really know your customer. You kind of just, the best you could hope for is getting another project or getting another contract. But when I would work with entrepreneurs, and they're squirrelier, and the projects are difficult from like a cost and a timeline perspective, and there's a lot of expectation management, but we build something really amazing, including an amazing relationship. So you get to know them, you get to know their family, you get to see inside of their business in really a unique way. And from developing hundreds of products with all those different size organizations, I got kind of a unique perspective. I say sitting shotgun through entrepreneurship. So seeing all those companies and seeing their successes and their wins and their unexpected victories and their unexpected issues and roadblocks and obstacles, and see all of the tactics and strategies that they use to overcome those problems. And as my family's company, our defense contracting company, as we've grown that with our product strategy, and we'll talk about product strategy in a little bit, because I'm really amped up right now to share how you can grow a business with physical products. But as we grew that company, we worked less and less with entrepreneurs. So I founded Red Blue Collective, which we specifically focus on coaching entrepreneurs. I say innovative misfits, right? To transform product ideas into a business reality. So we're not just selling stuff, we're creating brands, which is really, really important. But I packaged up that experience and made my framework, and I work with people from inventive would-be entrepreneurs who want to go into the startup space to say mid-sized companies that want to do something more entrepreneurial, very different from what they're doing right now. And so going in and treating their team, their engineering team or their product team, almost like an internal startup, and really shaking things up. So that's been pretty cool. But that's me in a nutshell. I basically design stuff, make stuff, and teach people how to do the same. And yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very cool. So I think you downplay that a little bit, in that you really have the experience, and you not only talk the talk, you walk the walk. So not only have you helped with the larger companies, helped with those defense contracts, you've helped entrepreneurs create products, and you've we'll get into the story in a little bit, but you created this product out of nothing in a short time frame. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about working with entrepreneurs that, you talked about are a little squirrely and kind of all over the place. And
Yeah.
no disrespect to that, because I know that I've lived that. But
Yeah.
the question I have for you is, at what point do you have somebody who is so tied to the dream versus manufacturing costs? Like, at what point do you have to step in and say, okay, this is getting a little too far out? Like, does that happen very often, where it's pushing up against manufacturing capabilities or costs versus the dream?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because that's one of those main obstacles that we talk about all the time, is like, um, when I poll people, what's preventing you? And I ask this, and I put it in like my show notes, and I ask it all the time, like, what's the one obstacle? What's the one question that if I solve that thing, you could create the life that you want, or build the business that you want, or what would get you to that next level? And inevitably, it's it's some flavor of funding, right? It's something like, hey, I want to do this big thing, but I can't because I need $1 million. And what I've found is, with the framework that we teach, one, I really do heavily focus on showing people how you can build revenue, because I think that's the best thing to validate a market. We can always serve our target audience in ways that will build revenue. It'll build like trust factor, know like trust factor, and then we can move on to our big idea. So we have a strategy that we call traction products that breaks that down and creates a unique way of getting to market. But um, there's also interesting investment opportunities for people that have truly game-changing ideas. If you listen to the End Hype podcast, there's large corporations, government entities, charitable organizations that they put out these kind of bounties for innovation. So if you have a really big idea and you solve something like automation, education, health, food, agriculture, um, there's a host of different robotics or AI, like basically big world problems. If you truly have an idea that's really big that you can't break it down into smaller ideas, because it's not an e-com idea, it's something really big, there's people out there that are willing to give you, 200,000, 500,000, $1 million for that to exist without uh, taking any equity. And we've been super successful with this in the past, I'd say 12 to 18 months. So we've gotten millions of people funding through those vehicles. So from HeroX or challenge.gov or similar programs. So that just like all goes back to, I'm wearing Brian's hat, but it looks like my little logo and Hype logo as well, because entrepreneurs get really, really focused on that idea, right? And they fall in love with that idea. But we'll present some obstacle and say like, well, if this happened, like, so I guess I just don't have any dreams left. They throw it away. And so I put all those things into that End Hype bucket. That's like what we were talking about, fake gurus or fancy people giving people advice. Or I say, say like you had a startup and you had one big hit, and then you're going around telling everybody this is the way that you're successful. And I'm like, that's survivor bias. Like, there's all these End Hype things that I put into this bucket, and that's what we generally try to focus on. But people being down on themselves, and it's like almost the hype of failure is such a big thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting that there's so many different funding vehicles out there. Like I said, we'll get into a story, but there's Kickstarter out there.
Yep.
There's those government contracts. There's those companies out there looking for those innovative ideas. And, it's kind of the same thing with like software companies. They'll put bounties out there if you can break their code, or, you can find vulnerabilities. It's all to get them better. So they're willing to put money out there to help themselves out, and in the process it helps you out at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen with, if you're making a commercial product like a consumer good, we've seen people build audiences. We've seen them go from white labeling products that are available with their brand, so customizing them, so they are, definitely serve their audience, but they build the brand because they're in alignment. They look great. They, they build revenue that way. We've seen people do very customized versions of that. Of course, in the supplement industry, this is really common. Food industry, this is super common, like with co-packing. But people don't understand that in physical products, this is pretty common as well. Like if you go into Home Depot or Walmart or Costco, you see Kirkland brand. It didn't just like magically appear, right? They don't build a factory to build that thing. They just go to the manufacturer and say, hey, why don't we strike a deal? And if you have the audience and you have the access to customers, you can do this for pretty much anything that you want. And that's been really successful for us as a funding vehicle and a customer validation tool for consumer goods. And then on the super high end, we're, I'm dealing with people where we're looking at SBIR grants, right? And things like working with DARPA. And I'm like, this is the same thing. It's the same, it's the same thing. So teaching people to go to university and getting unused intellectual property, that like professors are basically generating intellectual property and not commercializing it all the time. And I'm like, I used to want to be the smartest person in the room, and now I treat things like I just want to get them done. So I tell people, you need to be dumber. You need to get a dumber person. So I'm like, here's this DARPA call. I know how to sell stuff and roll up and pitch an idea. So I'm going to go to this university, get intellectual property, try to commercialize it with this grant and form a company. That's what we're going to do. And you can, so there's if you have a dream, there's Kickstarter, there's crowd equity, there's venture capital, but there's all kinds of crazy ways of doing stuff too. And it really depends on, you got to formulate that goal and say, this is the life that I want. This is the kind of business that's going to help me get there. This is what I want to do, who I want to serve, and line up your actions to those things instead of just like, oh, I'm going to, woe is me, myself out of my dreams, or I'm going to build a business that I hate because I don't like having, banker venture capital people breathing down my neck about growth, or hey, I don't like having to deal with the US government for my SBIR grant. It's like, why did you form that company like that then, So, we live in like a very accessible time, like ideas and people are very connected, and we're all kind of stuck at home. So it's kind of even easier now to like make those pitches and make those connections. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's what do you want to do?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I think going back a little bit to, people white labeling things, I think Amazon has really pulled back the curtain on that, because you see, through the FBA crowd, you see the exact same product, multiple different brands. And it's definitely helped people realize, oh yeah, this is a common thing.
And the drop shipping and the FBA stuff. And it's like, I was just talking to a drop shipper, and they've come to this same realization that they can't really build a brand. They can build a business that it builds revenue, which is fantastic because so many people don't get to that stage. But they've realized that without creating their own product, or at least white labeling a product, they're not really building a brand. Like if they stop, all the revenue stops. There's nothing that can happen really automatically. They can't stack products. Like we show people how to create product portfolios, right? Where you can upsell, you can build your list. It's sell across different verticals. There's a lot you can do when you actually have a real business. Drop shipping is kind of it's a tactic. It's not a business, right? But what the advantage of that is And from a traction product perspective is those people have learned how to do Facebook ads. They've learned how to do customer service. They've learned how to make those kind of connections and think entrepreneurially. And so they've moved past a lot of the obstacles that people would have. And generally they have a little bit of revenue. So it's easier to get into, creating a custom product. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually how I started with the hustle focused energy. Is I started with a white label private label product,
Mm-hmm.
tried to modify it, spent a year doing that, and finally it didn't work out. And so I went, a completely custom route to create what it is today. But what it is like you mentioned, something, the supplement industry, there's a lot of it out there of
Mm-hmm.
people marketing the exact same product with a different label on there. And you know what, it works if it works along with their brand, but there's definitely something where you help to guide people in those product decisions on whether they need to go that route or whether they need to create the completely custom thing. I mean, you have expertise in both sides of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to be overly romantic about your product business journey. And I have a great client who I'm going to be sharing a lot more details come next month about her journey. But she was in one of my earlier incubator programs, and she has a hair tool. And to develop a product of that kind, so it's a heated liquid producing, like, imagine like Keurig, but for conditioner, for curly hair. To develop that product, you're looking at let's say $150,000 to $200,000 to fully like get the first run of that product to market. So from paper to that production ready product. And it's like, okay, well, that's too much money, so I guess we just give up, right? But we've gone through a process, and she did an excellent job of this, is like using social media and other content tools to hone her message and validate her customer, picking out products that those customers wanted, white labeling them, then getting custom versions of those made, building revenue. And then what we say is then your product becomes an inevitability because you're dropping it into a system that already works. So when she's approaching venture capital and she's approaching these even manufacturers, she can say like, look, I have 20,000 people that follow us. I have these famous people that are on our advisors. I have these resources. I have this revenue, and everybody really wants this product. So like winners win, But if you're going to a manufacturer and saying, well, I have this kind of 3D printed thing and it doesn't fully work, but I want you to help me make it work, and I'm pretty sure that it'll sell. It's like, hey, I'm in the business of making stuff. I want to make a lot of stuff, and I want to make good stuff. So like, I'll have to pass on this because I know it's going to be a pain in the butt, right? And I'm not quite sure that it's going to succeed. But when you get on the other side of that, kind of using that traction methodology, it's like, wow, this person's already winning. I want to hop on this team. I want to be part of this team. I want to be part of this success story. This is going to be a case study. This is going to be a big order. This is going to be something that I'm going to 10x my investment on, and that's worked. So like that's, it's just so easy to look at that initial idea, and I know you've heard me say this like a million times, but I love this quote from Ed Catmull, right? Is like, where, to paraphrase, he's saying that ideas are like ugly babies, right? It's like we think that they're beautiful, but other people look at it and like, this kind of needs to grow up and mature a little bit. It's really easy to look at that product idea and obsess about it. And that's why I say over and over again, every time I put out a piece of media, we're going to transform product ideas into a business reality, right? Because products are a strategy for a moment in time. In 2 years, your product won't look the same. Your product won't look the same. You might have 3 products, right? You might have a different way of selling the product, like your channel strategy, your customer acquisition strategy will change. so much of it will change, but it's really easy to obsess about this one point and not see that the business is supposed to be a vehicle for you to achieve the life that you want to achieve, not like some kind of self-absorbed ego trip to like get your idea and foist it onto the world, right? You're like, nobody wins in that scenario, right? So
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Is, what people do create the products largely out of ego. I mean, at least in my experience, I've dealt with that a lot. I worked for a company for 5 years where that's what it was, is the owner created the products, not necessarily what the market wanted, but it more of a, hey, I can do this. And they didn't sell. The company, I mean, ended up going from a multi-million-dollar company to almost nothing, where it was then sold off. But
yeah.
yeah, it's just one of those things that people can romanticize it and get too caught up in it, and that's absolutely the case, which is unfortunate because the ideas have good intentions, but you need to be able to execute on it and change with the times, because that's a constant in life, is change.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's right. And if you can acquire customers through any means, then you have this pool of people that are already interested in what you're doing, and you can just ask them what they want. And like I was saying, is Kform, our defense contracting company, like our services probably aren't as appealing unless you're into like hardcore manufacturing, I guess. But our products they're kind of boring what they do, and it's not even something that you could use my own competitive analysis framework to go and find the products. I literally just, when somebody is interested in it, I ask them about their problems, and then if enough people tell me, hey, I want a product that does something like this, we develop that product. That's it.
Right.
And it just so happens that the products are really expensive. So if I make one, it pretty much pays for that whole, I don't have to keep inventory. We make it ourselves, so it can be as custom as you want. Like, it's set up for what our capabilities and what our uniqueness is, like what our kind of core niche, but it still like boils down to a really dumb strategy. It's like, we have certain customers, every time I see them, I ask them what they want, and if they're willing to buy it, I make it. That's it.
Yeah. Sounds so simple, right?
Well, I mean, so our customers are government entities, and our products are as expensive as a car. So we sell millions of dollars worth of the product a year, and it's like, how do you find those people? It's like, well, they are difficult to find, but once you get a hold of them, make sure you just ask them what they want and you deliver what they want. Like, but I've found from selling e-com stuff and total novelty goods, it doesn't work any differently than that, right? And the analogy that I give is like, Boeing doesn't build a fighter jet and then ask the US government if they like to fly, right? The government has a need and they're like, well, we're the best in the world, right? We can build anything you want. So if you pay us some money, we'll develop a specification for you, and you can float it around and help us build this specification. And then, Boeing's going to hook you up. And like, that's how winners do it at the billion-dollar level. But for some reason, entrepreneurs, they do it in a self-defeating way. It's like, they want to build a fighter jet and they've never seen a plane, so we kind of have to get over that. And I
Yeah.
don't know.
So, you talked about how you think, obviously you're coming from a product-based company and product-based background, but
Yeah.
how is it that you think products are going to really grow and scale a business in 2021?
Well, yeah. So this is great. So there's a lot of opportunities there. One of the biggest ones, and I want to get it out of the way right now, is the idea of barriers to entry, right? And this is the thing to get onto the other side of, is because it's difficult, it's worth doing. And because it's harder to enter the market, that's the opportunity. That's the separator. That's where we create the distance between us and our competitor. So if you're a digital marketer or you have a total knowledge product, right? An easy way to create separation is to then add a physical product. That's if you're a influencer, you're a thought leader, you're a coach, you're anything, the barrier to entry, and even if you're the best in the world, right? The barrier to entry is almost zero, right? You can just hang out your shingle and say, I'm a digital marketer. And you go out there, I'm a copywriter. And that's why you see so many kind of scammy kind of nonsense in that industry. It's really hard to separate yourself and elevate your brand to a level where you can say, I am better, because everybody's ClickFunnels lead page or whatever looks the same, right? And until you get in and you dig in deep and you're like, wow, this person really has done this thing. They really know what they're doing. So that aside, just think about that. Is like, yes, making a physical product is more difficult than selling a knowledge product, but that's why there's an opportunity, right? Say, I tell people, where there's mystery, there's margin, right? So like where there's difficulty, there's opportunity, right? So that's the little bit of that. But just from like a broader like macro perspective, e-com is huge. If you looked at 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, everybody was obsessed with getting their product into a physical store. And I'd say even for my consumer product good companies, they even 5 years ago, people were super obsessed with getting their product into a store. They'd be like, yeah, I'm making a toy, I want to get it into the toy store. I'm like, well, that toy store doesn't exist anymore. So right. And they're like, I want to get it into Best Buy. I'm like, Best Buy is closing. So so now people are like onto my thesis of, hey, you can spend all your time to try to get that retail partner, or we can build in the pricing and the structure that you're going to need to have a distribution partner and have a retail partner eventually. But in reality, between you and me, we're probably going to replace that with like some other sales channel, like a distributor or an affiliate network or something else that's going to scale digitally. But we pretend like that's the way that it is, because right now, if I'm looking for something, I'm going to Amazon, right? Or I'm searching Google, or I'm looking on YouTube. Or for me, I'm still on Instagram looking for stuff. I just bought English Bulldog from Instagram, right? It's just like, so
Cute dog.
it's, oh, thank you. Yeah, she's the best. But, it's like, how do you get in line with the actual behavior? So for people who are, who are thinking about they're thinking about opportunities, I'm like, analyze your own behavior. Like, what do you actually do? And they're like, oh yeah, I look on Instagram and I buy a dog. It's like, so why are you trying to get your product into a store? So e-com is great, but that also means that we can be as big as we want, right? And we can leverage things like fulfillment companies. Instead of having it be in a store, we can use distribution companies, we can use partnerships. And like, you can run a 7-figure e-commerce business from your laptop or your house, right? And not to have like massive physical infrastructure. And that's becoming, instead of becoming true like it was 5 years ago, it's the necessity now. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been lots of people who have asked me, when I create my product, is like, oh, what stores are you trying to put it in? It's like, I'm trying to sell it direct to consumer on my website. I mean, there's obviously partners that you can partner with, but it's not about getting it into brick and mortar. That's not the end all be all like it used to be.
Yeah, 100%. And like that kind of is the same as we were talking about the traction products. It's like we can look at that as like, that's a possible inevitability. But in the past, 10 years ago, somebody would say, well, I need this much money, and that's going to build my inventory, and then I'm going to sit on it. I'm going to try to do this deal with Toys R Us. Mm-hmm. And after meeting a dozen or more entrepreneurs that have their basement filled with whatever thing that they were trying to do because they never landed that deal, I'm all about selling DTC, direct to consumer. I'm all about creating partnerships with other people that own those audiences. So like kind of outside, and maybe leading into something we can talk about a little later, like collaborative launches, right? Whoever owns that audience is kind of list hacking, but for physical products. I think all the attention is digital right now, and the opportunities are massive. For me, I talk to people and they might have a really great idea, but then I get to the core of it, and it's because they have some unique piece of information or knowledge from their job or from their past experience, or they have, they have some kind of gift. They have some kind of edge, unfair advantage. I'm like, oh, you stuck that unfair advantage into this idea, but there's all these other ways that we can do that, including, hey, Trent, you've got the skills. Like, let's apply those skills with like our buddy who has 100,000 people that are listening to everything that they say, and like let's actually get a product to market. And there's lots of cool things that we can do that you just couldn't do even, I'd say, for sure 10 years ago, but for 5 years ago. I think the opportunities for solo entrepreneurs or really small tight teams to develop products is just really on point right now. And I'm kind of afraid that in another 5 years, this is going to be so wired in that the barrier to entry is going to increase. That's
okay.
That
I can see
e-com
that.
is going to be the only thing, and edging out e-com may start to get more difficult. Certainly from an ads perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Once you're the only game in town, it's easy to monetize that.
Yeah.
So, story that I think you're most known for is you creating something out of nothing. People talk about all these excuses, and I know you're big on how excuses are just BS, and they really are. So tell us a little bit about this story of how you created something out of nothing.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going around, and this is when I first founded Red Blue Collective. So I wanted to eat my own dog food a little bit, and what I teach people to do is go do customer interviews, go actually engage people, and figure out what they want and build what they want, right? So like this is funny. It's like 2015, 2016. I was speaking at makerspaces, universities, different entrepreneurial events, and this is before I ran incubators and before we did a lot of the heavy coaching programs and stuff. And I just wanted to find out, like, hey, I'm from this kind of behind the scenes industry, manufacturing, right? I actually engineer and make stuff, but I don't know outside of this world, like what problems people are having. So I spoke I don't know, I'd say like once a week for a couple years. And I would show people, hey, here's our product development process. Like, this is what I've used to develop hundreds of products. Like, this is the way that you pitch a B2B customer. This is the way you pitch a B2C product. Here's a case study of this. And I thought like people would take the information and be like, I'm going to start a business. I'm in, right? But instead it was like, the more creative I was of creating this content, the more creative people were for excuses. They said like, oh, I lack the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. I mean, they're looking at my business, and they're saying like, you've got millions of dollars, you have a huge facility, like you can make anything that you want. So like, I can't do that because I don't have what you have. And I'm like, this is junk thinking, right? Because excuses are poison. And as a demonstration of the Red Blue Collective framework, I gave myself a challenge. Like, I would hack a Kickstarter, because at the time, Kickstarters in 2016 were even more popular than they are right now. And as a funding vehicle, that's what everybody wanted. They either wanted to do licensing deals, which I don't fool with, I direct them to a friend of mine, or they wanted to do Kickstarters. And I said, okay, so what I'll do is I'll do a Kickstarter and I'll launch it in 20 days from nothing. And I'll show my community that I'm using this process, and I'm going from literally a blank sheet of paper through list building through prototyping to live launch. If I don't make money, like you'll see that, I'm full of it, whatever, but it's going to be up there for everybody to see. Yeah, I didn't use like my manufacturing facility. I didn't use my overseas partners. I mean, we get like tens of thousands of things made. So it's like, I'm just going to use the community makerspace tools. If I'm not cleared to use a tool or I don't know how to use it, I'm going to barter. I'm going to say, hey, like I'll do this and you do this part for me. I didn't pay for any complex marketing plans. I didn't use like any teams or consultants that I would use. I used Instagram and a landing page, and I showed people every decision of exactly how I did it. So how did we pick a product that we would build? And since I had very limited time, it had to be simple. So you'll laugh at what it is. Everybody who's listening to this will laugh. And you have to put this in the context of time as well. So bear with me. But, I tell people to pick a customer segment that you have an unfair advantage with because you actually care. I think that's like the second End Hype episode. It's like the ultimate unlock in business. It's like, if I'm serving a customer segment that I'm a member of that tribe and I actually care about them, like I know the way that those people think because I'm one of those people. I can be authentic because I'm that guy, right? And if I have to do something really fast and I have to make something really valuable, like I'm going to go to that every single time. I'm going to serve my own group of people because I don't need to do like focus studies. I don't have to pay for industry research. I already know who the leaders are. I know where those people hang out. I know the unique vocabulary. I know like the events and the magazine or whatever it is. Like I already know that stuff, and it's like cheat mode for sure, right? But I asked them about their problems, their feelings, their complaints. I involved them in the development process. So that literally at the time was me drawing live on Instagram and Facebook and taking pictures of it and being like, hey, should I make this or this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? 3D printing stuff and filming it and showing them. But like, what the hell did we make, right? So we made a $200 fidget spinner. And you have to realize that at the time, like there were very few people outside of machinists that made fidget spinners, right? There weren't the injection molded ones. They weren't in 7-Eleven. They were pretty rare, and they were so rare that when people would make them and post them on Instagram, they would be sold out immediately. They were being pre-sold for $100, $200 with like backlogs in the month, 2 months. And I was like, if I'm gonna have to show people how to make something, make something where the problem is like there's too much money and not enough product, right? So yeah, and of course I know machinists, I know knife hobbyists, because like I'm that guy, right? I'm the guy that buys all the EDC stuff. So I'm like, I know where they hang out, I know what they think is cool, at least to a certain point, right? But yeah, we launched the Kickstarter. We did 40K in pre-sales. People who are outside of the niche, they couldn't believe that we charged $200 for a fidget spinner. They're actually, if you bought the full package, it's $230. And they thought like, hey, it should be $5 because they're not a member of our niche. So their opinion doesn't matter. And it's really easy to go out and like ask your mom, ask your cousin, ask your friend, like, what do you think about this idea? And they'll be like, bro, that's so cool. Or like, no, that's dumb, honey. You shouldn't do that. And I'm like, those people's opinions don't matter at all, right? Only your customers' opinions matter. And they only really matter when they pay money. So people wanted it. That was it. It worked, right? And then I showed people that, and they had like more excuses. This is what was crazy. It's like, they said that to be successful, now you would have to make a cheap version. So even the people that saw it, they were like, you have to make a $5 or $10 or $20 version of this thing, and that's how you'll scale your business. And I'm kind of like, at my heart, like I'm like my tribe, the tribe that I coach, right? I'm an innovative misfit. That's how I want to identify myself, or an outsider. So I was like, nah, screw those guys. Like, I'm not going to make a $5 thing. My mission in life is to make cool shit, right? So I'm not going to make a $5 anything. I'm going to make the best thing possible. So as our next thing, you have to understand that as I was doing these, I was actually posting like a class that people could attend and say like, hey, I'm going to go over and show you exactly how I'm doing this like in a month. And then I do it, post it all online, and then do a recap in a class. So it's kind of but I mean, it's just put yourself under pressure, I guess. But yeah, so I said, I'm going to make the most expensive fidget spinner in the world. That's what we're going to do. And we pre-sold the artifact spinner for $700, and we sold out in a week and a half. We sold more than 150 of them, and that's not counting the special editions that sold for over $3,000, which we donated the money for. So it's kind of a cheap thing. Like we, auctioned off one and then gave money back to the makerspace. Auctioned one off, gave it to a museum that's in Baltimore and stuff. But here's the deal: it's like we didn't even need Kickstarter. We pre-sold through a Squarespace page, right? We didn't need a fancy website. I didn't have an ad campaign. Didn't run a single Facebook ad on the second thing. We just created the product, and we created our own niche for that. And the reason that it worked is that we collaboratively launched with a friend, Chris Bathgate, and he makes these phenomenal CNC machine sculptures. So they're just unbelievably complex and beautiful, but they're pretty expensive, right? And he'd only made a few smaller pieces previous to that, and of course they all sold out. So it's like we're taking the value of a $10,000 or $20,000 sculpture and we're putting it in your pocket.
Wow.
So we coined the term pocket sculpture. So we didn't sell a fidget spinner, we sold a pocket sculpture. It just happened to be a fidget spinner. So this is a lesson in perceived value, and this is what I have in my strategic product pricing, is that people have to understand that they want to go into a market being the cheapest, but you should be going into the market being the cheapest relative to the value that you're providing, and value is subjective. So like if I'm able to provide a limited edition sculpture by a famous artist for $700 instead of $20,000, it's amazing, right?
Right.
But if I'm selling a $700 fidget spinner, like I'm a criminal, right? So, I mean, that's the thing. But yeah, like I did that whole thing, and I do similar things like that to just show people, hey, like you can do it too. Like, you don't have to, like, I'm working with a bunch of green tech, like solar startups, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the Department of Energy. I'm working with robotics, like very innovative robotics companies, and they're at one end of the market. And then I'm working with people that are doing like a hair tool or an e-com product. And they don't realize, here's the cheat, is that that people are people, right? And businesses are businesses all the way up. It doesn't matter if you're doing a 8-figure tech startup, right? And you're doing this, if you're doing the fidget spinner, like the framework is the same. All right, and our objectives are the same. Running a good business is the same, like making people happy, making sure that their problems are being solved, having good customer service, going over the top. All of the things that we know make a good business is the same. It's just that we want to perceive that the really difficult thing is worth doing, and it should be harder, but it's like the framework is the same. I found this to be demonstrably true.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the crazy thing is you basically proved all these people wrong. You use no resources, you use no funding out of your own pocket, and you created what at the time, I mean, it was less crazy, but looking back, it was still crazy. Of a $200 fidget spinner sold $40,000 worth, and then built upon that to create a new market segment. I mean, like, all the excuses are there, and you didn't let any of them get you down, and you went ahead, you created this amazing product. And it's just one of those things that like you said, you wish more people understood got the right message out of that of, hey, I'm capable of doing this, and rather than, oh, let's go to the next excuse, the next excuse, and the next excuse.
Yeah, yeah, and like to be fair, to make the more expensive product, it required investment. I did use I did use my machine shop, I
Okay.
right, but the first product I didn't, and it built enough revenue where then I could take that money and I put it right into making the second product.
Yeah.
Right, right. So like you can do the math. 150 times 700 is a lot better than 40K. But like
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to do that second thing unless I had done the first thing, and that's where people get screwed up. Is they create an idealized future and then they don't reverse engineer what that success would be and figure out like what can I do tomorrow or what can I do next week. You say like action creates opportunities. I always telling people is like you don't even know how successful you're going to be because when you're down the road, all these opportunities are going to open up to you because you're going to be in like the slipstream of reality, right? I don't know like a better way of putting it, but like it just seems like when you're doing the right thing, other stuff happens almost to the point where we have another problem where we have to say, hey, I'm going to stay on the ball here because I don't want to go off with this person and do this other thing. I'm going to stay focused. But it's really easy to look at that future and say, I can't get there, instead of just looking at it and saying, I have personal responsibility and I have my own unique skills and I could do something tomorrow. I could do something next week. I could do something next month. I could do something in the next couple months, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, my initial idea, that sucked. Like that was, I don't even want to do that anymore. I have such a better idea and it's so much easier. And I have this partner that's going to help me do it. And I have this, I understand the market and how to do this and how to do that, because you'll never know until until you're actually like building it up. So.
Yeah, no, that helps me realize I did it all wrong. So when I was creating my product, I did solicit the advice of people on Instagram on, decisions based in that product I was creating, but I could have been doing more in the run up to that to build the momentum, build different product categories and different things along the way to get to the thing that I was romanticizing about.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean there's some I can understand with certain types of ideas and products, the apprehension is like, hey, if I show people what I'm doing, like my idea is going to get stolen. And like we go pretty in depth about intellectual property protection and how you create strategies around that. But when it comes down to it at the end of the day, and there's this picture of me actually in Shenzhen holding up to my eye the knockoff, the incredibly garbage knockoff of the artifact spinner, because I see it right there, and I also saw all my friends' other $200-300 fidget spinners there, knocked off. But it's like at the end of the day, like mine was already sold out.
Right.
I made one and pre-sold the rest of them and then made them, and then we didn't make any more. So it, like people were sending me and sending Chris the knockoffs, but it like I understand with like a tech product or something else, like you want to protect that idea and you don't want to get it out there, but you don't have to like spill the beans. You don't have to tell everybody what you're like exactly what you're doing, but you can go out there and still talk to people and say, hey, Trent, I know you're XYZ. Like, can you tell me about the last time that this happened to you? Or, hey, like I'm always asking people my one question, right? What's the one obstacle or question that if I solved, it would get you to the next level? And people say, man, I really want to know more about this. And then I do a podcast on it or I write an article about it. And I don't know, that's like my lazy way, because then I don't have to think of what I'm going to talk about each week, right? or bring a guest on to answer the question. But it's like I don't have to go in depth and give away everything. I can just go and ask people what problems that they have, And if I ask 100 people what problems they have, and like 80 of them tell me the same thing, and then when I ask if I can follow up, like 60 of those people actually do want to follow up with me, even though they know I'm going to waste another 30 minutes of their time. I'm like, they must really, really care. Like, they must really, really care. And when we do those customer interviews, it's more valuable than really anything else. But
Yeah. Yeah,
people are just
absolutely.
they're afraid, you know.
Well, I think it goes back to also you saying that people won't take that action, even though you laid out the framework for them, that people still weren't taking the action. So by you putting yourself out there and, giving some of the idea away and you're afraid people are going to steal it, how many people are actually going to execute on that? And then also, how many
Yeah.
steps ahead are you already going to be?
Yeah. I mean, that's that and yeah, and at a certain point you have to say, like, I'm going to be building a brand, and people are they're going to love my brand, and they're going to love my business, or they're going to identify with me and my brand. So I'm going to create loyalty because of that, and my customer service, and because of my quality, and I'm going to build a relationship. So inevitably, when somebody rips off my product, it's not going to be the same, right? They can't rip off you. Like, there's only one Michael Jordan, right? There can't
Hmm.
be knockoff Jordans. There can be a shoe that's less valuable that looks like a Michael Jordan XYZ, right? It'd be like there can be like direct actual copycat Jordan ones, but it doesn't mean that it's really like going to destroy the Jordan brand. Like, nobody's going to buy a Jordan ones ever again, right? And if I made a Jordan, it would be worth like probably, well, because I can't make shoes, it would be worth negative $200. But even if I could make shoes, like, it would be worth $20 or $30. It wouldn't be worth $180 because there's that perceived value, that pesky perceived value thing again. But it's really hard to erode brand. And yeah, people are just they're afraid of a thing that, like, I'm so afraid that somebody's going to steal my idea that I'm going to do nothing with the idea, and then I don't make any money on it anyways. So I'm like, what's the value of a dream that's not executed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. And a lot of people get in their own heads and they are afraid to take that action, but like I said, it's about taking that action and working towards whatever that goal is, whether it's, you know, business related or more importantly lifestyle related, and what that business can create for you.
Yeah.
Uh, that helps make those decisions come along quicker when you think about the bigger picture rather than, okay, what is this step or what is this step? It's, okay, this is what I really want. This is the lifestyle I want. Now let's go execute however, whatever means possible. And that takes
Yeah.
away, like I said, some of the romanticization of the
The
product.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just like a little, like, coaching psychological aside, is like, I'm giving somebody something way bigger than their fears, right?
Hmm.
I'm saying, like, we're going to achieve a lifestyle, not a business, not a product, not a Facebook campaign. We're going to achieve a life that you want, something really, really big, right? But then I'm also giving people, like, really actionable steps, like, what's the one thing that you can do tomorrow, right? So
Right.
so like, we're stuck in the middle, and the middle sucks, right? So the middle is like the middle is like the product. I'm like, in the long run, the product's irrelevant, and in the short run, the product's irrelevant. So, like, let's just worry about, like, the big thing and the small thing, and, like, keep our eye on, you know, let's just steamroll past those little pesky obstacles, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, that's awesome. I love that. The product is irrelevant in the long run and the short run. So
Yeah,
it's,
it's
yeah,
just a thing. It's a thing that you're gonna do for a little while, right?
right. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at it that way, it totally changes the perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I've really appreciated, talking with you and going over these things, but um, tell me a little bit about what you're working on and where people can best find you.
Oh man. So I'll be opening coaching back up in January. So we have some slots opening up, And that's really where I'm focused on Red Blue Collective right now is we're doing full service product development. And I think that that's great. But my initial concept was like, hey, I'm just going to give you all my experience and have it in an organized framework and give you access to my network. So like you need an XYZ, like I know that person, not going to hurt my feelings if you don't go with them, but like I can shortcut that process and give you access to like, here's how you get this thing done. So we're going to focus back in on that and open up a few slots in January. So that should be great. And then the other thing I'm putting a ton of effort into, I'm trying to make this better and better every week is just the End Hype podcast, right? So, and we live stream every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And then I do a recorded show as well. So I'm gonna up it to 2 times a week pretty soon. I don't know, but yeah, I try to alternate between something really tactical, like in manufacturing, like here's how you actually find a manufacturing partner, and then something that's a little bit more mindset or marketing focused. So you get a little bit of flavor about different things. And then, I tell people this every show, Trent, like if somebody has a problem, just DM me. Just if you there's something that's stuck and you're like, if I knew how to do this thing, I would be able to do XYZ with my business. Like it's going to take 10 minutes out of my day. And if it changes your business, like I'm just going to give you the answer for it. So like if you have a problem, message me on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever I'm lurking around. And if I can't answer it right then, I'm going to bring an expert onto my show, or I'm going to, turn it into an episode and answer that for you. Because
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And your podcast End Hype is super awesome. You end the hype, like it says, you cut through the crap. This is what it is. This is what it actually, the reality of the situation is. And that helps you see through, what you actually need to do. So I definitely am a listener as well. So definitely check that out. I'll make sure to include links in the show description. But one question I want to ask you before I let you go is personal or business. What is it that excites you about the future?
Oh, wow. I think the dichotomy between predictability and unpredictability is something that I always think about. Is like kind of our conversation earlier about like 5 or 10 years ago. There's certain aspects of the way business operates where you'd say like, hey, this thing's coming. And, if you ask people in 1999, they'd be like, oh yeah, there'll be e-commerce malls and this and this. And it took so much longer, but it's also radically different than what anyone else expected. So from kind of my physical product universe, tech kind of innovation universe, I'm really hyped up about AR and VR, particularly like interactive worlds with AR and where that's going. But every time I see an advance, like I've got that Quest 2 on order, right? It's not what you expect, and then where it goes, I'll equate it to when the iPhone came out and people were like, what's this app stuff about? And it's like, it's not what we expected at all, but it changed everything. And what every pundit thought it was, it's not. And we don't know the opportunities until we're down that pathway, right? And like that's what I really like about technology, and that's what I'm really excited for in some of these new things, but particularly in AR and VR right now. I think it's going to change everything. I just have no idea what that's going to look like. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's what makes it exciting, is you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very cool. I know I've gotten a ton of value out of this, so I know my audience has gotten a ton of value out of this. So I encourage you all to get out there and hustle the day.
Hey, thanks for listening all the way through. Sincerely appreciate it. But hey, since you're here on YouTube, I have a favor to ask. If you got any value out of this podcast, and I know you did, go ahead, hit the subscribe, the like, and the bell notification buttons. That sincerely helps us out, and I truly appreciate anybody who does that.